As I paint this face, I want to take you back to a time when the world looked different. Darkness was still hiding in plain sight. The man I'm painting today doesn't look like a monster. In fact, he looked like someone's grandfather. Kind eyes, a soft smile, grey hair. But this was one of the most disturbing killers in American history. His name was Albert Fish. And if you stay with me, I will tell you how he fooled the world and how a single letter finally revealed the truth. Albert Fish was born in 1870 in Washington, D.C. His early life didn't just foreshadow darkness, it raised it. His family tree was heavy with mental illness. His uncle was locked away in an asylum. His brother had what they call mental fits. His sister showed signs of instability. Even his mother, the only stable figure in his life, believed she saw visions from beyond. When Albert was 5 years old, his father died, a heart attack. His mother couldn't support all her children, so she placed Albert in an orphanage. He spent his most fragile years there, not loved, not nurtured, but beaten hard. He was whipped regularly by the staff. He said later that those beatings did something to him. He began to enjoy the pain, not in a normal way, but in a way that slowly turned him into something different. By his teens, Fish was already experimenting with pain. He would hit himself with paddles, sticks, and belts. He began working odd jobs and by all appearance was just another quiet boy. But inside, something was broken, or maybe missing. In his 20s, he got married and had 6 children. To his neighbors, he was just another working father, but secretly, he began developing rituals. He had inserted needles into his skin, some so deep they stayed there for decades. An X-ray years later revealed 23 of them buried in his pelvis and groin. He believed pain was part of life, not something to avoid, but something to seek. He read strange religious pamphlets obsessively, ones that talk about punishment and sacrifice. He thought suffering brought him closer to God. He began traveling state to state, looking for children who wouldn't be missed. He used tricks, sometimes pretending to be a talent scout, other times he offered candies or small gifts, but always he looked for the quiet ones. The earliest known case was 1910. He took a man mentally slow and lured him to a remote house. Fish tied him up. He later wrote, "I took my time. I stayed with him for 2 weeks." The man was never seen again. In 1924, 80-year-old Francis McDonnell was playing in Staten Island. He went missing. Later that day, his body was found in the woods. The scene was brutal. Witnesses described seeing an older man with a grey mustache watching children near the woods. They said he looked frail, quiet, soft-spoken. The newspapers gave him a nickname, the Grey Man. Years later, Albert Fish confessed to Francis' murder in his usually calm, flat voice. He said he couldn't help himself. Then came Billy Gaffney. In 1927, 4-year-old Billy vanished from his apartment building hallway. He had been playing with another boy. That boy told police the boogeyman took Billy. A trolley driver came forward later. He said he saw a man dragging a small boy, crying, "I want to go home." The man said nothing, just held his head down. Fish later confessed to this too. He wrote about it in detail, but here's a version safe enough to repeat. The little boy cried for his mother. I told him it would be okay. I told him stories so he would stop crying. But what I did next, I cannot explain. Police found pieces of Billy's clothes in Fish's home. He kept them as reminders. The crime that finally brought Albert Fish into the light was the murder of Grace Budd. She was 10 years old. Fish had seen an ad in a newspaper. A boy named Edward Budd was looking for work. Fish visited the Budd family, pretending to offer Edward a job on his farm, but he wasn't interested in Edward. He saw Grace and changed his plan. He returned a few days later and told the family he was taking Grace to a birthday party. For some reason, they trusted him. Then, she was never seen again. 6 years passed. Then, in 1934, the Budd family received a letter, handwritten, yellowed, tightly worded. It was from Albert Fish. Here is a clean, respectful version of what he wrote. Dear Mr. Budd, that day I came to your home with a lie in my mouth. I told you stories to gain your trust. I saw your daughter and knew what I planned to do. I took her to a house I had prepared. She was quiet and calm. I told her stories so she wouldn't be afraid. I did something no person should ever do. I know I'm not well in the mind, but that doesn't change what I've done. She never deserved it, and I can only hope someone will pray for me. That letter led detectives to trace the envelope to a boarding house, and that's where they arrest Albert Fish. They found him in a small boarding house, thin, polite, and holding a newspaper. When the police approached, he didn't run. He didn't even look surprised. He just said, I knew you'd come. That's how it ended. Not with fight, not with sirens, but with a quiet old man calmly admitting to something unthinkable. At the station, Albert Fish didn't try to deny anything. He spoke softly, almost gently, and he described things no human being should ever say. He told them what he did to Grace, and then he kept going. He confessed to a murder of Francis McDonnell, the boy in the woods, then to Billy Gaffney, the little boy from the hallway. He even gave small details that only the killer would know. And finally, he admitted something else. He claimed he had harmed over 100 children. No one could prove most of it, but they believed him. He spoke about pain as if it were a gift, about fear as if it were something beautiful. It wasn't rage, it wasn't hatred, it was obsession, ritual. He believed he was chosen to do these things. In prison, he behaved like a calm, elderly man. He read the Bible, he wrote letters, he painted small things with whatever materials he could find. To the guards, he was polite, but to the doctors who interviewed him, he revealed his inner world. He said voices had followed him since childhood, that he was receiving messages from beyond. He believed in pain the way some people believed in prayer. His trial began in March 1935. The courtroom was packed. People had read the letters. The papers were full of headlines calling him the Grey Man, the Real Boogeyman, the monster who wrote a letter. His defense claimed insanity. They brought in doctors who said Fish had at least 5 several mental disorders: paraphrenia, hallucinations, religious delusions, sadistic compulsions, and signs of schizophrenia. But the prosecutions argued that Fish knew exactly what he was doing, that he planned everything. He used fake names, wrote detailed letters, hid evidence, traveled across states. They said madness isn't disorganized. After 10 days of testimony, the jury came back with a verdict: guilty, but also sane. He was sentenced to death by electric chair at Sing Sing prison, and in the months that followed he waited. He kept writing, mostly about pain, sometimes about religion, and occasionally about grace. One of his final notes said, "I don't know if I will be forgiven, but I believe suffering brings a man closer to God, and I have suffered more than anyone knows." Some say he was crying for himself. Others say he had no soul left to cry with. On January 16, 1936, Albert Fish was led into execution chamber. He looked like a man heading to church. The guards strapped him in, but when they flipped the switch, something strange happened. The first jolt failed. Doctors later said it was because of the 23 needles still inside his body, buried in his groin, his stomach. Some had been there for decades. They tried again. The second shock ended. He was 65 years old. His last words were, "I don't even know why I am here." As I paint his portrait, I'm thinking that we are always expect monsters to look like monsters. But the truth is, they often look just like us. Albert Fish wasn't terrified because he shouted. He was terrified because he whispered, because he planned, because he waited, because he looked harmless. This guy, he was known by at least 6 names: the Grey Man, the Boogeyman, the Werewolf of Wisteria, and the Brooklyn Vampire. This was a story of Albert Fish, one of the darkest minds to ever walk quietly through the world. Thank you for watching, and if you want to hear more stories like this, while I paint the faces behind them, like and subscribe. I'm GNek, and this is Crimes in Portrait. See you in the next one.